Low ceiling hatch, a rookie under supervision. Will stepped onto the grounds of the institution with its peeling signs and chipped stairs that seemed to be apologizing for their very existence. The Restoration Social Center, a name that sounded like a joke. Here, in the small town where everyone knew everyone, his new position as a psychologist sounded pompous, but in reality it boiled down to listening, nodding, and not asking too many questions. He was 32. He had recently returned from the capital because his parents' house was still here after their death. Money was scarce, and work for city intellectuals was even scarcer. The center became his only option. He had been warned, the people here are special, and the system, well, a bit old. The corridors were damp. The smell of bleach, old paper, and something else, like wet fur, filled the air. Pavlo glanced at the first patients. A quiet girl with an exaggerated caution in her eyes, an old man who repeated the same phrases, and a boy who never spoke but always drew hatches. Always the same one, round, black, with footprints around it. He was given a room with a metal table and a sad ficus. "If something happens," the nurse, Vera, said, leaving the sentence unfinished. Her gaze stopped on one of the old surveillance cameras in the corner. "Just don't go in alone." "In what sense?" "There are rules here," she smiled, but without warmth. The first few days were normal, people with pain, stories, tears. But over time he began to notice something strange. After 5 p.m, the doors to wings B and C closed automatically. There was no security at the post, but someone was always watching. The windows in some rooms were bricked up. And the strangest thing, the patients never mentioned events after the evening. Never. One day Pavlo stayed late. He just wanted to finish some paperwork. And that was when he heard footsteps. In the empty wing C, quiet, steady. Then a sound, like someone scratching the floor. He peeked out into the corridor, dark, and only the red flickering light of the surveillance camera. On the floor, a drawing in chalk. The hatch, the same one. The next morning he approached the artist boy. He didn't say a word, just handed him a new drawing. Now the hatch was open, and inside, a face, exactly like Pavlo's. His jaw clenched. He wanted to say something, but just then the phone rang from the reception. "The director wants to see you. Now." Pavlo didn't know what would happen next, but somehow he felt the game had begun. Doesn't exist. The director's office was covered with a rug on which the traces of old boots had long since left their mark. Mrs. Olena, a tall, slender woman with a sharp voice, sat behind a massive desk, which had nothing on it except for a thin folder. "Pavlo," she began without greeting, "I see you stayed late yesterday." "Yes, there were some paperwork matters." "We don't. Stay after the wings are closed. It's a safety rule." "Whose safety?" Pavlo tried to smile, but she didn't answer. "People here have stories. You won't always understand them after the first sessions. Sometimes they can be convincing. But you shouldn't believe everything you see or hear. So, I shouldn't believe my own eyes." She glanced at him with the shadow of something, either a warning or fear. Especially after 7. After the meeting, Pavlo went outside. The air was fresh, but the sticky anxiety lingered. He walked home and decided to stop by a cafe. Inside, Vera, the nurse, was sitting. "Have you been to the Guardian yet?" She winked. "Yes, it seemed like she's hiding something." Vera took a sip of her coffee and leaned closer. "Everyone here hides something. Do you know how many patients have disappeared in the last 10 years? "What do you mean disappeared?" "They just stopped existing. No records, no stories, like they were never here." Pavlo returned home with the feeling that he had lost his way in something very old, in memories that weren't his, in fears that had faces. That night he heard the sounds again, and again, the hatch drawn on the floor, but now a hand was stretching out of it. He took a photo. In the morning, the picture was empty. No drawing. A letter was attached to the door of his office. Inside was a yellow document without a date. At the top, report, Object 27, repeated detection, destructive behavior, self-identity unstable. And at the bottom, a photo. His own face. Pavlo began to feel that he was not just working at the institution. He was part of it. Lines that lead deeper. For the next few days, Pavlo tried to live like everyone else, arriving on time, listening to stories, writing conclusions, drinking coffee with Vera, avoiding the evening wings. But every little thing, a lamp flickering in the same rhythm, the patients laughing without any apparent reason, cracks on the walls in the shape of the same hatch, led him deeper. He began to review the archives. Access to them was restricted, but Vera secretly gave him the key. Among the moldy files, yellowed cards, and printed forms, he came across documents marked Cycle. These were records about patients who returned but didn't remember themselves. They came to the center with similar symptoms: obsessive behavior, drawings, silence, a fear of hatches or enclosed spaces. The same handwriting repeated on the margins. This place has no bottom. That night he had a dream. He was walking down the corridor and all the doors were locked. Voices from inside were calling him by name. One door opened, a face peered out from the darkness. His own. But it was smiling. He woke up sweating. But the worst part was that he had chalk on his palm. The next morning, one of the patients, a boy named Tikhon, who never spoke, suddenly uttered a phrase. "You're in the third cycle now." "What did you say?" Pavlo froze. "They don't want you to remember." "Who are they?" "Those below us." Pavlo went to the director demanding an explanation. She silently handed him another document. Staff recommendations with previous ties. Pavlo S. Observer object. Stabilization check in progress. At the end, his own signature. He didn't understand anything, but something was beginning to take shape. Pavlo wasn't here by chance, and maybe this wasn't his first time. He decided to return to Wing C. This time, not to listen, but to enter. Vera stood in the doorway. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I've been beyond the limit for a long time. I need to find out who I really am." "Then go. But remember, if you see yourself, don't talk to him." "Why?" "Because the one who talks to himself stays." Corridors that were not built. Pavlo entered Wing C. The doors closed silently behind him. The light flickered for a few seconds, and when it came back on, the corridor was different. Wider, the ceilings lower, and the silence. Not just the absence of sound, but the feeling as if you were standing inside someone's ear. He walked slowly. Along the walls, old signs, barely readable. Identification, recursive room, memory window. In the first room, he saw himself, 10 years younger, that Pavlo was standing by a blackboard, drawing the same hatch. When the real Pavlo got closer, the copy turned its head. The face was calm. "I've been waiting for you," it said. "Who are you? You before you broke." "Where is this place from?" "From the depth, from the inside, from memory." Pavlo closed his eyes. When he opened them, the room was empty. Next, another room. There was a bed, a doll, chalk, a photo of his mother, but she was a child, and next to her the same hatch, in the photo, sunk into the ground. Among the trees, Pavlo left the room with his heartbeat pounding in his temples. He realized that this complex wasn't just real, it was something between generations, between traumas, between people who never had the chance to say, "I'm scared." In the corridor he ran into Tikhon. He was holding a sheet with the words, "Here, you will not find an answer, but a form." "What does this mean?" Pavlo whispered. "You're being formed, from the inside, to stay." "Stay where?" Tikhon dissolved into the darkness. At the end of the corridor, heavy metal doors. On them, the familiar symbol, the same one as in the drawings, in the documents, on the hand in the dream. He touched them and heard a voice. "Pavlo, your turn. Go in. See who you were." The doors opened, and he entered, and behind him they closed. Members. Inside it was dark, but not night. This was another darkness, complete, slow, viscous. The room Pavlo entered had no corners. The walls merged into one another like circles on water, and in the center, another hatch, real, metal, and on it, handprints, messy. Many, small, adult, trembling. Around, portraits, all familiar faces, patients, Vera, the director, even himself. But all the faces had altered eyes, empty, black, sucked inward. This is the archive, a voice echoed from everywhere. An archive of what? Losses, forgotten. Those who were here and left part of themselves. Why am I here? Because you're the next carrier. No, I remember. I know myself. You won't break me. But you've been here before, the voice replied, and you've already said these words. Suddenly Pavlo remembered. Not clearly, but strongly. He had already gone through this, in dreams, in past lives, in previous cycles. He had seen this hatch. He had once tried to open it, and this time he opened it. A boy slowly rose from the hatch, small, with white hair, a familiar face. You, is this me? You are part of me. You are the one who survived, but surviving, you became empty. What will happen if I stay? You will keep the memory, but lose your name. Pavlo stood on the threshold. If he left, everything would be forgotten. If he stayed, he would become the archive for others. A witness. He sat in front of the hatch. I stay, but with the memory. The darkness sighed. Then your voice will become the door for the next one.